crime, because for me, um, it has basically been something that I know and appreciate um, ever since. You realize that, hey, listen, back in 1992, um, we had challenges, obviously different, but at the same time, you realize that you do have a segment of the society that will always find itself indulging in obviously unfavorable behavior. Um, Interestingly, I would tell you in the early 2000s, when I heard some of the persons who were involved in crime and criminality and who basically lost their lives, I smiled because I realized um, in my time in the police force, they were petty thieves, petty criminals. And you realize that unfortunately, it's something that we have to look and understand when young people, and we're talking about students, we're talking about teenagers, when they're exposed to a certain lifestyle, we have to get in there and get in there early. Otherwise, they later on become the hardened criminals of the future.
That's absolutely true. And that's why I think that so much need to be done to ensure that young people don't go down that road. And I saw that you were involved in volleyball, you were involved in swimming. Those are important activities that may help to steer you. In other words, the more people become proficient at whatever else they do, they are less likely to engage in activities that are negative, because sports, it's empowering. It's another thing to know that you can swim. It's another thing to know that you're proficient in volleyball or cricket or soccer. You don't tend to want to throw that away easily. So that's a positive thing. I have also been of the view, Dominic, that I think that politicians make a mistake when they try to take credit when the crime statistics are down, simply because they don't really have a total handle and control over that lever. And the moment you start craving credit, if it seems to be falling, it's going to embrace you and embrace you forever when it starts to rise. So I don't know. I don't know what's your take.
The reality is that there's so many different inputs into a child and children's behavior that you realize taking credit and obviously being beaten for when situations worsen, both are falsehoods. The reality is that obviously communities need everybody. It needs strong parenting from the beginning. It needs strong church leaders. It needs strong community activists. And we have to realize that because it's so multifaceted, no one individual could take credit for, let's say, reduction in crime or even an explosion in crime. Because the reality is that somewhere along the entire chain, there could be a weak link. And the weak link might not be the politician, the weak link might not be the church, the weak link might not be the community. But the challenge obviously may actually start in the home. What is the child exposed to? Is daddy boxing down mommy? Is mommy basically abusing daddy, whether verbally or physically? Um, what is happening there that is basically setting an image in that child that at the end of the day they're going to respond a certain way as they become adults?
Absolutely, I'm in agreement with you. If you had the ear of any decisive individual person, group of persons, government, what would you suggest as one or two key central points in trying to curb the crime rising crime that we see here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Um, I would say to you, let's pay close attention to parenting. I think even in recently, I have been highlighting the music of some stalwarts out of Trinidad, reggae, where they're basically saying, hey, we got to start teaching the youth. We got to put back in our representation. There was this young lady who did a poet and she talked about parenting. And I think critical is that we have to be able to start looking at the homes, understanding that, hey, listen, we have too many single mothers, too many single fathers. Um, the churches need help, especially where it concerns that status quo. Because unfortunately, we think partnership, and here now I'm speaking of home, I'm talking about male and female raising a child. Somehow we think co-parenting works. And the problem with that is that the child is exposed to daddy extra life, exposed to mommy's extra life. And somehow we expect that child to actually understand what a home really is.
Right. I
And
heard.
for me, parenting, focusing on the home, focusing on how we could basically empower our young people to understand that, hey, listen, um, extramarital affairs, etc., is a no-no. Um, we have to get the and support the churches because a lot of our children are growing up without Christian values. And this impact obviously how they look at crime. This impact how they look at relationships. This impact how they are able to handle disputes. And we have to basically understand if the home is where everything starts, a child foundation, formation, intellectual capacity, um, interest in everything, whether it's music, cooking, whether it's sports, whatever it is, the home is the core. And I
Right.
would say that would be my significant input into the conversation.
Right.
Let us start focusing on homes, not
But you know,
houses,
some people,
homes.
may argue that children spend more time out of the home. They spend from 9 until like 3 in school. Then they spend another what 3 hours, probably in the pasture, in the playground, and the time the waking hours where they spend at home might be little bit between 6 and 9, and
Jomo,
then they go to sleep.
Jomo, I would smile because I would say to you, they spend all that time acting out the values of the house. So, take for example, as simple as it is, a child will come home and they will complain, teacher gave me too much work. The parent's response is what the child goes to school tomorrow with. If the parent is basically responding responsibly and saying, well, the work is to ensure that it shapes you, it gives you the opportunity to do better. Tomorrow, when they go to school, they might be asking, could I get more work?
But
If the parent's response, sorry, Jomo, one
go
moment.
ahead, go
If the
ahead, go ahead.
parent's response is, boy, me ain't know what wrong with them teachers, all they doing is getting walk, 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 walk. The child is going to school tomorrow feeling that they could challenge the teacher on the amount of work they have.
But I'll say this to you though, your view is reflecting a middle class value and not a working class value. I'll tell you why. I went to the Roman Catholic school. I went to St. Martin's before my mother left St. Vincent, and there was not a single day that I can remember in my primary school education in that my mother looked into my book. It's not that she had no desire, but she walked to the Arrow pool. You may be too young to know where the Arrow pool used to be, but that's where the NIS building is now.
Yes.
And then when she left there, she went to the people, the guns who lived in that house right behind grammar school.
Mm-hmm.
And then she washed for them and she cooked for them and she not cooked, she washed and ironed for them and so on. So invariably, she would get home close to dark and had really no time to spend with the children. So the response that you just gave about, um, oh, well, maybe the teacher is trying to get you to trigger some uh, best practices is fundamentally a middle class value. And this is why, for example, the children of successful people invariably are successful because you're a professional, your wife is a professional, your children grew up in a house of professional. They see your work ethic, they see you reading, they see you writing, they see you studying, they see you have a disciplined regime. That rubs off on them. The child who is working class may not, they may see the parents working, but they may see them working to death and can't get out of their state of penury. And then the question then, well, what should I work for?
Well, Jomo, I smiled, right? Because um, my mother was a teacher. And interestingly, for me, is that I tell persons I grew up in a home where I consider it an extended home because exactly what you described is what I found my mother doing in terms of filling in the gap for the mothers who could not have. No, unfortunately, I think we have moved away from that kind of sharing of responsibility. And
Right.
this is where I'm saying, getting back to understanding how we have to support each other and the home is where I'm saying to you, this is where success starts because I would say um, I have had brothers and sisters, and I refer to them as brothers and sisters because they slept in my home when their mothers could not have come for them. I realized that because of that, a lot of them, even though mommy and daddy could not have read, because my mother stepped in and was that middle person. Today, they themselves have come up with the right values, and this is where I'm saying I can't say Jomo that your mother didn't have her challenges. I'm saying somebody I know stepped in the gap and caused
Yeah,
me
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah, yeah.
appreciate.
But I had that experience too. I
And that's
had
the point.
in primary school, I had teacher Nicholas Austin
Mm-hmm.
who told me when I said I wanted to be a postman, he said, nah, I think you could do better than that. I had when I dropped out of secondary school, I had Adrian Saunders who asking me if I want to be a lifelong paper seller. I had I had Camilo's mom, Ralph Gonzalez's former wife, Sonia Gonzalez, who told me, look, you have to go back to school because you have potential. So when you have those people who are intervening in your life, that's great. But a lot of people don't have that kind of intervention.
And this is where I'm saying the problem is because we we might appear comfortable going along with our lives saying that okay, my daughters would see who I am and obviously emulate that. What about the neighbor who's having a challenge? Could we offer a word of confidence to them saying, hey, listen, you don't have to fail. You don't have to basically think you are not going to be successful. Jomo, right now, my business partner and myself, we do a program at intermediate high school where we are speaking to a form which the administration has basically said to us, they're the ones who need encouragement. And this is where I'm saying the mentoring, the parenting beyond the parent, beyond the biological parent. Can we become a society where we are so focused on, hey, Jomo don't just need food, clothing, and shelter, but Jomo need love. Jomo needs a person who will be able to say, hey, listen, you may have started out with challenges, but you don't have to end with the challenge.
Absolutely.
And that for me would be my focus. One of the things that I'm saying, we must be able to do better as a society.
Yeah. But you pointed to a number of things, right, that may impact on crime. You pointed to the church, parenting, the home, empowerment of youth, community. You did not seem to think, or you didn't mention that the um, dismal economic conditions tend to drive crime. You don't think that that's a major driver of crime and criminal activity?
Jomo, the whole thing is we have heard success stories of persons who were on the brink of basically suicide. And I went to that extreme because, I mean, I always say, for me, one of the most recent stories that I looked at is Bruno Mars. The fact before he actually um, made his breakthrough album, he was basically living out of his car. Now, and now that might sound far fetched because I took
But
it out to St. Vincent, but I want to actually even come even home where I have saw. I tell persons I grew up in a house where I could have tell you when it was mid-month because you realize the cupboards would have gone empty. But in that cupboard somehow somebody else's child was being fed. And this is why I'm saying poverty of the mind is more, let's say, destructive than actually not having means. Because at the end of the day, I saw a clipping where they had a person with two arms, two legs on the street begging, and a man was passing by with bricks on his head, no arms, and he was carrying something around his waist. It's perspective.
right.
The challenge with it is that for me, a man making a choice not to do better is not economics. It is him choosing not to do better. Now, why I say
So,
that? Jomo, you even in your description, you said Adrian Sanders asked you if you want to be a paper boy all your life.
right.
So you could have made a choice to do anything, but you were seeking an honest living.
No, I never used to sell I never used to sell
No, no, I
I
understood.
never used to
But
sell
this
the
is what
paper
I'm saying.
for money. Sold the paper for political commitment. I was in Ulimo, we were selling papers and so
No,
on.
no, I understand. But at the same time, I'm saying at the end of the day, even that showed me that, hey, listen, as your humble beginnings didn't get you to go extreme left. It allowed you to take a perspective that said, hey, listen, I can still do something that is worthwhile, is valuable. And this is where I'm talking about the home and the home
But
training.
I think that's a mythology though. I don't think that the society is organized in such a way so that all of us would succeed. In fact, some the society is organized in such a way to ensure, to hamper certain people's future, to retard certain people's future.
I may disagree with you on the premise that, again, if you take the Bible, right, and it's talking about each and every one of us, once we accept God, we and we follow His ways, His directions, etc., we are supposed to have an abundant life. The challenge with success is how we value it. The fact that, okay, I will say, even tonight, you and myself interacting, that is success. It hopefully persons can look at it and understand, hey, listen, persons with different political views, different backgrounds, etc., could actually act and interact in such a way that the whole society benefits.
Absolutely, I totally agree there. But I'll give you another example to try to make the point I'm making. Um, I think a lot of people, if there's one area of governance that the ULP would long be remembered for, is the advances that St. Vincent made educationally.
Mhm.
Um, it ushered in universal primary and secondary education. An unprecedented number of persons had an opportunity to go off to university. Not only university where there were scholarships like Cuba and Taiwan and Mexico and Venezuela and so on, but at the University of the West Indies where people had to pay and where the government was spending a sizable portion of money to ensure that that happened. Long remembered for that. And that whole process is heralded as an education revolution. But you would agree with me that precisely at a time when we are celebrating what the governing party calls an education revolution, we have more failures now than ever before. You have teachers telling you that entire classes cannot read. I cannot remember in primary school where I know of any such situation. I cannot remember ever where there was such a situation in secondary school. But that's a phenomenon of Vincentian reality now.
You know, Joe, I I can say that I have had an interesting life experience very early. After writing my common entrance in junior five, that would have taken place in May. Oh, no, yeah, April, May, somewhere there, or early May. I was then basically at Catholic school. Myself and I think 14 other students were sent up to senior three because for at the time, I think they were asking for assistance. But to get the assistance, you have to produce a class that would pass at senior three. I have my school even certificate.
So
No,
do I.
right. No, I would say to persons, you realize that while we may say that it wasn't, I will tell you it was. I lived it. The challenge now is that I would say we are training too many children to pass exams that actually take an appreciation in the learning and the
But you're not
experience.
addressing you're not addressing my question, my point
No,
though.
no, no. I'm getting to it.
Okay.
So that at the end of the day, when a teacher says to me, a class can't read or a class can't basically do maths, count. I remember my days of going outside and you had to actually read and you actually had to do what was called mental maths. I mean, unfortunately, I think my skin has healed a lot since, right? But you knew that also teachers to ensure that those challenges were overcome. They basically exerted, I think, a little more attention to everybody. And I say that because even through the process, I look at my own children and I have a feeling that somewhere along the line, as much as they have obviously passed, I figure somewhere along the line, there was still that connection between teacher and student that was missing. And this is where I'm going to say that yes, we have a lot of people passing. A lot of people are able to answer the question. The challenge is take away the textbook, take away the exam, go into practical life now. You find that they struggle, and they're struggling because, unfortunately, I think the appreciation of what the education revolution has offered it is not fully embraced because, to an extent, I am looking at the interaction on the let's say sports field. I'm looking at the interaction in the classroom. I'm looking at the interaction in the wider world, and you realize that is the application of what you have gained to pass the exam
You're
before the
not you're not you're
exam.
not you're not you're not blaming ultimately you're not blaming the students who are reading below grade level, or students who are just can't read at all, or can't not literate.
And this is where I'm saying I'm not blaming them. I'm saying
So who do you blame?
where is the creativity? Because okay, take for example, you can't get trigonometry, but maybe if you find some creative way to actually show how in life everything you do is part is determining distance, it's determining time, it's determining angles, etc. We have to be able to ensure that, let's put it this way, we go beyond the certificate and we go beyond the textbook, because we have to find the mechanism where we can reach the students where they are. And this is what I think the generation before me, those teachers, are as limited as they may have been. And here now I'm speaking about the certificates. You realize they try to find the way to reach each
I,
student where they
I,
were.
I agree. I agree. I think that the teachers, there was a lot of commitment. We have a comment earlier in which someone was saying that it takes the community to rear the child, and what we have had is a breakdown in community, not only here in St. Vincent but across the region, across the world. How do you respond to something like that?
I'm in total agreement. The fact of the matter is as simple as saying good morning, saying good evening. I mean, our neighbors' children don't even look at us that way to be able to, they will pass you in the road as though they don't know who you are. And somehow, somebody still expects you to look out for that child. Now, you yourself want to look out for that child, but then you may have to correct that child, and then you come home to a tongue lashing from your neighbor.
But Dominique, you would agree with me, right, that some of the out of order activities we see our children acting out and play are mirrored from what they see at the highest echelons of Vincentian society.
Um,
There's a lot of um, bacchanalism. There's a lot of lack of respect. There's a lot of civil discourse. There's a lack of political hygiene. There's a lot of that. And when
and
people see that from the highest level, they
and
live
that's
that.
why that's why when you ask me where I would focus on the home, because my whole thing is that child needs to understand that no matter where that is displayed, it's unacceptable. And if
Yeah.
we get back to that point where we could basically ensure that we are training our children to accept what is good behavior and what is obviously actions that should not be tolerated, what we'll have is actually children start to tell their teachers, hey, you see that? That's how I want.
You think so? How does that happen in a country where the tribes are paramount, and the tribes are in mortal combat? The tribes say don't talk to Jean because she is tribe red. For example, I saw somebody, I don't know if you're paying attention, somebody came on, they saw you or listen to this course, they stooped their teeth. I don't know if they're still on, they're probably saying, what am I gonna listen to this man for? You know? So, but that's the point I'm making.
No,
Um,
but Jomo, you realize that my reaction is simply, if we don't do what is right, then we allow that to continue. Now, the whole thing is, yes, the person might see me and say, oh, well, I ain't got time to listen to him.
well, I don't know if that's it, or they might have
No, no,
heard something and didn't disapprove and disapproved in that way. As we know,
right.
Vincentians are want to disapprove. Forget him or forget her or
Yeah,
whatever.
well, that is part of it, but the whole thing is we must never lower our standards to accept anything. And one of the things is, I heard I heard a movement back to Ipa's song, Country Before Party.
Right.
And for me, this is what becomes critical. More of us have to be talking country. And as we speak country, I believe the more people speak country, the more you'll get that movement to, hey, let's focus on what is good for the nation, and a movement in the right direction to say, hey, listen, if that is not good for the nation, whatever it is, whoever is committing it, we are not accepting it.
But do you get that? Do you get a feel that our governors uh, tout country above everything else, or
Um,
is the party now the paramount vehicle for everything?
and this is where I would answer this obviously by saying this is where each and every one of us get to add to the conversation. Not just accept it and say, oh well, this is what it is, but be able to say, hey, listen, um, if it's not good, let's change it. And if we have to build St. Vincent, because this is what we are all about, development of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And when we
Well, I
focus
would
on
hope so.
something, well, let's not just hope, but let's make it our reality.
No, I'm saying when we look at the actions of some of whether we're talking people in politics or in business or in religion, one wonders whether the motivation is building St. Vincent. I'll give you a practical example. I hope you're not uncomfortable by it. When a leader tells the nation that my borrowing policies are intended to put a hook in the gill of the nation, I mean, to me, that's indefensible for any leader to say that. That is anti-national. That's almost treasonous, in my view. But that passes for political discourse.
And this is why, Jomo, I would say your discourse and my discourse then has to be about, hey, listen, if this policy is good for the nation, let's ensure that the nation is basically focusing on the good of the policy and ensure that everybody buys into it, understanding there may be challenges with it and it may require, uh, for quote unquote, it might require yellow to help fix or it might require red to help fix. But as Vince mentioned, it's our problem to fix. And let us get to the point where it's not about what somebody said, but it's about our response to what is said.
No, no,
That either,
but Dominique, come on, man. You're giving me a vanilla response. The question is not, you can't say the most powerful man in the country says something and then it is not what. Because significantly, what we have had, once that pronouncement is made by a person, you get people lining up and defending that.
I,
You don't get no
no, no,
dissent from that.
I'm not running from that. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, each of us have a personal responsibility
Agreed.
to be
Agreed.
able to say, hey, listen, if something is wrong with it, we will say something is wrong with it, but not make it an issue that we continue to lament every single day. But we have to be able to become problem solvers.
Yeah, but some of us responsibilities are not to solve problems. Some of us, the commentator don't solve problems. The commentator speaks to the game of play. The commentator says, "This is what's happening. That was a bad stroke. That he missed a great opportunity. He should be thrown off the field." That's what commentators do. He don't have solutions. He just
And
look at the and whether we're talking sports or we're talking politics, that's what some people do. This notion now that you should not speak unless you have solutions or possible answers is a way of telling people don't speak.
well, I would disagree with you from the simple fact that this is where, I mean, technology has helped us. Each and every one of us could now go, and whether we are going live tonight, tuning in, or we decide a week from now, let me go back and see what Jomo and Dominic really said. The fact of the matter is we have that ability now to replay and to
Right.
learn. So yes, the commentator responsibility at that point in time may be to point out the flaw, etc.
Right.
But our responsibility after is not to keep lamenting on the fact that the commentator said it was a bad stroke. Is that we now have to understand if we are going to play the game, we can't be playing those bad strokes.
No, that's the role of the stroke maker. That's not the role of the commentator. The commentator should lament. The commentator should lament every single day. And those who say that you are um, in the choir of lamentation, they gotta do something to stop you from lamenting.
No,
They,
and this is where I'm saying the stroke maker now will should be able to go and ensure the next time they go at the wicket, the commentator comment will be, "Boy, that was
applaud
such
you.
a brilliant stroke."
Absolutely,
We're supposed to
absolutely,
learn from the errors we make. This is
absolutely.
part of development.
But I want to take you though. I want to take you to your training. You're a trained accountant. You have wide experience. You work with some of the top accounting firms. You work with what is it called? Uh,
Panel Foster,
right.
John
Um,
Glasgow that became KPMG.
and now KPMG. You have it now. You have your own firm now. You're the managing partner of your own firm, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. So now tell me something. Do you get statistics from anecdotes?
No, we look for information where it should be
Verified, right?
updated. Yes, yes. We
Right.
will go and
So,
verify the
so
information.
when somebody tells you that anecdotically, we don't seem to have as much unemployment as some people are saying, I mean, that position is quite laughable, won't you say?
Um, to answer your question, if the person doesn't obviously present um, a position, a position that you can basically verify, test, check for yourself, then yes. But if the person presents information, and this is where we have to appreciate that not because somebody have one set of facts mean that they are absolutely correct, and
Right.
not because somebody else have a different set of facts mean that they too are incorrect. What we have to do is obviously continue to wait. And this is why, obviously, we have been educated. We have been exposed to learning at almost all the levels now there is. So we are talking about primary, secondary, tertiary,
Right.
professional. Now, what we have to do is ensure that we always inform ourselves based on the arguments presented whether the information is accurate or not.
Now, what percentage of unemployment, I'm talking about you, would you say would be an alarming percentage to you? If somebody were to say that unemployment in St. Vincent is alarmingly high, what would you say that mark should be in order for you to agree with that person that unemployment is alarmingly high?
If again, if
Is there a
you are,
benchmark?
yeah, I mean, anything, let's say 30%, 20, 30%, yeah, it's a challenge.
Right. I'm not talking about challenge. Any unemployment is a challenge. I'm talking about alarmingly high.
Yes, anything above that, yes.
Right. Now, let's try and work this out. Would you conclude that unemployment in St. Vincent is alarmingly high?
I would conclude based on what I have is that there's a significant challenge between um, the supply of labor and the demand for labor. Because one of the things that my experience have basically indicated that there are a lot of people who are looking for people to work. And interestingly, as much as we hear people say they're looking for work, they're not available for work.
So so that's not the people's fault. That's a fault of the education revolution.
Actually, and this is where I would say the problem is that we have to start
Give me a
breaking.
direct answer, man. I want a direct answer from you.
I know you want a direct answer, so you just allow me. Right? The problem there is um, not the education revolution, but the
So why
attitude
is
that
it?
we
Why
have
is it
built.
we have? Hold on a second. Let's do this brick by brick. If it's not the education revolution, why then do we have a disconnect between labor demand and labor and qualified labor availability?
I would say, Jomo, Vincentians have a kind of laid back attitude towards work. Whether you are well trained or not, um, I know I might get licks from you for this. We have basically, let's say, run so far from slavery that we find ourselves challenged where work is concerned. In the sense that, okay, take for example, you have few professionals or few qualified workers who would tell you that, hey, listen, um, I don't look at the clock to figure out what time it is to leave work. You have a situation where we are, as well trained as we are, we're still waiting for somebody to give us instructions as to what to do.
Well, that is because we are not teaching critical thinking. That is because, in fact, that's because critical thinking is not celebrated and encouraged.
Um, well, I would tell you, Jomo, and I think you might have gone through the same experience that I have, where when you went to sixth form, one of the books that you were first introduced to was Straight and Crooked Thinking.
Mhm.
No, I obviously I can't speak to what it is today, but I can say to you, this is why I earlier lamented that to an extent we have to be able to ensure in our formative years we're getting our children involved in that process, that developing that attitude where work doesn't become a challenge.
Yes, here's a question from a listener. The disparity between the supply of labor and the demand for labor usually causes unemployment to increase immensely. Is Mr. Sutherland afraid to speak plainly?
And this is where I am not afraid to speak plainly because I have said it. The reality there now is you have to qualify what then is employment.
Let me
So,
ask you this.
unemployment.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe, as some are increasingly saying, mainly government supporters, that the vast majority of Vincentian young people are lazy?
Um, I may not describe them as lazy, but I would say that I think they're not go getters.
So they're lazy.
I didn't say that. I don't know.
So they are
And why?
slow.
No. And
They
why
are
you use that?
dim-witted.
No. Why you use that? Lazy for me implies that, hey, listen, you basically have no interest in work. Not being a go-getter is that obviously if I tell you what to do, you're prepared to go and do it. But you
But
yourself will not be motivated enough to just
is,
get up and find the answer for yourself.
is that the case where um, Sandals recently opened?
Mm.
The government boasts that what? How many is that? 2,500 people went looking for a job. That's not a sign of people not being go-getters. People want jobs.
And
Every day I walk the street, I meet somebody who tells me if I know of anybody hiring, and they tell me that from somebody who's looking to clean a building, clean an office, work in an office. Uh, that's not my experience with people saying that they don't want to go get. They want to go get. but they're meeting a stone wall.
All right. I would take that example, and the person goes and get the opportunity, and then all of a sudden you're going to meet them 6 months after, and they have changed. They are not employed where they were before, and you realize that the reason being is my boss expected me to do too much, or my boss had a problem because I kept coming in late, or some of them unfortunately find themselves involved in things that they should not be, and they lost their job. Now,
But you would agree that
some,
sometimes the boss expect them to do too much. The boss wants them to work twice or three
I,
times.
well, you know, I would say this, earlier I pointed to my time in the police force, and I remember when our batch passed out. Superintendent Bailey was the batch before me, and one of the things that I realized is that there were times in the police force we were supposed to be clocking out. And most of the time you found us there at the station, still ready for duty, in spite of the fact that we should be on leave.
Right.
Now, I'm saying today, you're going to have a person who has been trained now to watch the clock. By the time it hits 4 or whenever, that's leave time. They're not
Yeah.
seeing themselves as being part of, hey, listen, if I stay wrong, I could actually learn more. I remember even my own effort in accounting is that because I found myself, and I'm not afraid to admit this, back in the day, um, I wasn't computer savvy. So when I was put in a situation to work a computer, I used to mess up all the files. So I
Right.
used to stay back to ensure that I get it right.
Right.
And because I
Someone,
stayed back,
someone is saying to prove the point, to work against your point about Vincentians not go-getters. Winston says the last time the recruiters for the cruise ships came, thousands showed up, hoping to be chosen. Isn't that correct?
yes, and again, and this is what I'm saying, showing up to say, hire me, and getting the job and fulfilling the requirements of the job are two different things. And we're talking about when you are in the position now, ensuring that, hey, listen, you are basically using the opportunity to basically expand your own horizon and obviously ensure that your employer is getting the returns they should get.
Right. How do you respond to a comment like this? Here's a hand. Our friend Augustine 49 is saying the assumption that all 2,500 persons were unemployed is actually false. Well, the first thing, nobody assumed that the 2,500 persons who showed up were unemployed. Nobody said that here. Nobody implied that. So you can throw that out the window. And then he goes on to say, also, 2,500 countrywide in the economy where some suggest unemployed is 40%, suggests that it's a very low turnout. Well, let us take that in turn. And then he goes on to say, I have been in Barbados where thousands turn up for fairs and long lines in hot sun. Because Barbados have high unemployment too. Plus, they have a larger population than us. But let's go back to the 40% thing, Mr. Sutherland. Um, isn't it correct that a few years ago, the World Bank said that youth unemployment in St. Vincent was 46%? Isn't that a fact?
Um, yes, it
If
is
you
a
don't know,
fact.
tell me you don't know.
No, yes, it's a fact that stats were posted, and yes, it's also a fact that the information that was posted was basically rebuffed,
Rebuffed by whom?
right? By our administration.
How so?
Because again, you looked at the data and you presented the information based on what they were basically claiming. And this is why earlier you asked the question, when somebody says something, should we just take it wholeheartedly as
Where do
their
you think?
threat
Where do
or
you think the?
can we challenge
Where
it?
do you think the World Bank got those numbers from? You think they pull it out of a hat?
One of the things that I would say is I realize that I mean a lot of the stats that a lot of these institutions use are not current stats, and obviously
Do
there
you
is some
think?
element of judgment in it.
Could you tell us of a time when all the stats where we had 40% unemployment?
I, I would say again, if we go
Since
back to
these are not current, these are all
no,
stats from
I
when?
would say if you go back to the 90s when things were not as bright as they used to be, yes, we had that high level of
40%
unemployment.
unemployment
Yes.
in the 90s. Okay. And so you really are telling us, Mr. Sutherland, that the World Bank numbers, which were presented, I think, in 2009, 2021, were actually numbers from, they were pulling numbers, they were presenting to us numbers from the 1990s.
I would say there was an element of judgment in it that they did
What is
not
the
come
basis? What is the basis for your comment that there was an element of judgment?
because again, if you actually, how should I say, understand a lot of the methodologies that obviously we as analysts, we as accountants use, there is some forecast, there's some judgment, and this is why at the end of the day, you will always get somewhere in a report a disclaimer that basically would say, hey, listen, it may not actually be 100%.
Right. I'm not
Yes.
saying that this is scientific certainty, but we can be sure that it's not off by magnitudes of 10.
And again, and I would say this, let us be factual that obviously with the world economic downturn, with a lot of the challenges that went on, there was some elements that suggested that obviously unemployment would have grown. And
Right.
I am confident that, yes, the analysis done had that kind of judgment in it that would
Okay.
have said, hey, listen, these numbers would have gone up.
But let me ask you this now. So there's some questions about unemployment being what percentage? In fact, the World Bank or the IMF, whichever of those, was talking about youth unemployment, right? But
Mhm.
let's do this. What percentage of the Vincentian population is characterized as youth?
Based on which stats?
No, no, no. Generalize. When you talk youth, what are we talking about? Let's say 15 to 60. I mean, 15 to 35. That's
I would say right now, when we talk about youths, we're talking about let's say 25 and under.
25 and under.
Yes. Now, reason with the age is because you realize that quite a lot of our students now um, do not necessarily stop at where we would have stopped at secondary, community college, or whatever it is. They don't stop there and look and say they're entering the job market. A lot of them still are going
Mr.
on.
Sutherland, with respect,
Go
with
ahead.
respect. Um, if you listen to our Minister of Education, each year he talks about disappearing numbers, persons who enter Form 1 and they cannot be found at Form 3. There are a number of things that account for that, and let's walk through them.
Mhm.
People might have migrated, is a principal one,
Yes.
or people dropped out of school.
Mhm.
Would you agree?
Um,
Because young people don't die that often. They live long. They don't
um,
die.
not in recent stats based on what we are seeing with the age of burial. But no, you're correct. At the end of the day, um, you when you look at persons in Form 1 to basically Form 5,
Yes.
a person leaves the class, either they have migrated because the
Yes.
parents are overseas and they're going
Yes.
to be
Yes. Yes.
internal,
Migration.
or yes, they have left for. I know students who have basically without good parenting supervision failed out of class and have left school.
But that's my point.
Yes.
So this notion that the vast majority of the young persons are in school is not correct. Because
Um,
even if we take your numbers from 18 to 25,
mhm.
by 17, 18, the vast majority of those youths are leaving school.
And
And the numbers, hold on, and the numbers in high schools now, primary and high school, are falling. They're not
and
increasing.
and I'm saying to you, the numbers now at tertiary is increasing, not falling.
Increasing where?
When we look at persons going off to actually complete their studies, whether
No, I don't think that you are appreciating the point I'm making.
Mhm.
Yes, people are going off to university. And as I said 20, 30, 40 minutes ago, the ULP gets a lot of credit for people going off to university. I don't know how much people we have at UWI now, but certainly from 2001 to 2010, we were second to the
Mhm.
campus
Yes,
countries in enrollment and,
and
and,
I
and
don't think that
achievement.
has changed.
What is happening now? Because you don't hear about it. So, and if you're not hearing about it, you know that if the government is not touting it, you know it's not, it probably not there anymore. But if we assume that 60% of the population is youth and 40 something percent of there's 40 something percent youth unemployment, it stands to reason that unemployment in St. Vincent is astronomically high.
And I am saying that again, this is where now you have to take that number that you're speaking about and understand whether it's a situation where there's not a job available for that youngster, or that youngster has basically decided, hey, listen, I am not making myself available for work.
What percent? Because I mean, this that view is also gaining currency among ULP people. What
Oh,
percentage of Vincentian unemployed do you all really
no, no
think?
more.
Hold on. Let me
Okay,
finish
go
the
ahead.
question. What percentage of Vincentian unemployed do you all really think say, I want to work, I want to go and stick up somebody, or I want to go and beg somebody? What percentage of the unemployed? If
Um,
there are 10, let's say if there are 10 unemployed persons, how many would you say, I'm not gonna work, I'm gonna stick up somebody, I'm gonna sell drugs, I'm gonna, how much of the 10?
of those persons, I would say 50%.
5%.
50%.
I mean five of the 10.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
You have a you have a
No,
rather you have a
no,
rather you have
I,
a
I,
rather
I, I
you have a rather
love that you
dismal view
said
of
wow,
you have a
because
rather dismal view of Vincentian youth.
no, no, understand.
It has to
No,
be.
I'm glad that you said wow, because listen, you go into a lot of the businesses, as you said, I've had experience basically working with a significant portion of our private sector. And I'm saying to you, you when you actually going, you realize a lot of these businesses wouldn't mind hiring at least, let's say, 34% more staff. But what happens is they're going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to hire 30% more staff and still have to turn around and do the work.
Okay. Augustine Ferdinand is saying to us that the 40% that we are hearing about is 2017 data, right? So that's 7 years ago. Now, Augustine has not. Do you think that there has been a dramatic increase in employment in St. Vincent and the Grenadines between 2017 and now?
Again, we take what has happened between 2017 and now, and we say, I would say, the recovery is happening now, but it was basically slow because again, you go back 2019, we basically the world started to shut down. 2020, we ourselves basically had that challenge dealing with. 2021, then you had the super eruption. So during that period, I'm going to say that the recovery would have been slow. Coming
And
off
okay, so
and
what
coming
has
off,
happened dramatically to change the 2017 number?
I would say here the recovery that has basically been bolstered by the activities of obviously the airport, the efforts with respect to the
The
national
airport,
stadium, the
the airport
efforts with
opened
respect
seven
to the
years ago.
port. Hello?
The airport
No, sir.
opened 7 years ago.
Right. So when it opened, it went through the same period that I just outlined, where it opened, COVID set in, we the travelers we
But
expected
within this,
weren't
no, no, no,
coming.
no. This government boasted that they didn't lay off anybody. They didn't close down at all. We didn't close down at all. Remember, that was the boast.
Yes,
You say other. In fact,
and at the
I'm
end of the
I'm
day,
hearing I'm hearing a voice in my head. While others closed down like a drum, we were
we didn't
open for
close.
business.
But also remember that that noise you're hearing also went on to say, while we did not close down, others weren't coming. So the statement didn't
No,
end
no,
there.
no. We told. In fact, we give incentives. We said, look, we are gonna. That's when we dropped the tax coming in. We said, no, come, all you who are happy and go lucky, come to our shows.
And at the end of the day, the reality
They
is
didn't
that
come.
they
They didn't
didn't
come.
come at that
I
point.
see.
But Jomo, thanks to that effort that we didn't close, etc., we're now seeing them coming.
Somebody's saying, if 5 out of 10 young persons in St. Vincent don't want to work, the crime rate. David is saying that if 5 out of 10 persons in St. Vincent don't want to work, the crime rate should be much higher. I
Um,
agree with David.
I don't. I again. I am going to say this is where we have basically gone through the process of understanding that, hey, listen, a person not wanting to work, take for example, Jomo, um, how many of us as parents have actually thrown out our 19-year-old, 20-year-old, 21-year-old, or 22-year-old? Most
Because
of
they don't
us,
want to work.
our children live with us up to 30, 35 and beyond.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, yes, there's still some sheltering going on. And we have to appreciate that.
Oh no, I don't think anyone denies that. But whether it's sheltering or not, we have
Joe,
high
I
unemployment.
would actually say to
Because
you,
because you
no,
have
hold on,
you
hold on. Let me finish this point. I
yes.
would actually say to you, actually, that is even one of the reasons why some of the young people feel they don't have to come in and necessarily work hard. So again, they themselves make themselves unavailable to work because their attitude towards it is
Dominic,
the one where they're
you
not
know,
giving effort.
in underdeveloped or developing societies, there's that society's time. So you hear about Vincentian time, you hear about Caribbean time, you hear about African time. You don't hear about American time. You don't hear about English time. You don't hear about German time. Because in those developed societies, time is time. So when I lived in the United States, when the train stopped and I called Larry and said, Larry, I will be late because the train stopped. Larry says, well, get here as soon as you can. In right?
I can't not show up, right?
You can't, you have to show up.
No,
But I
let's
am
take
saying to
that
you,
with
but
where we
let me
are
finish the
today.
thought. Let me finish the thought. I
Okay,
was
go ahead.
making that point to say to you that in these societies, the society is less structured, it's less developed, it's less disciplined. But that does not deny that there's high unemployment.
And again, this is where we.
And
I think we have. I
I
think
think
I said to you, my conversation here is not to say that there are challenges. It's to say that, hey, listen, there are a lot of reasons compounding this challenge rather
Oh,
than
but,
just
oh no, no,
saying,
no, no. Of course.
right,
I don't think we argue that point. I mean, St. Vincent is an underdeveloped country. St. Vincent doesn't have a lot of anything. St. Vincent, I mean, we celebrate uh, putting a hook in the gill of nation by going and getting money here, getting money there, getting money there. In fact, we celebrate that by even taking money from an institution and giving it away. Our prime minister said, which other country in the world borrows $10 million and give it away? I mean, that's fiscally responsibility. But I mean, you as an accountant would agree with that.
uh, uh, I would say to you that we have to basically get to the point where we are able to understand that there, everything is not perfect, but a lot of it has helped move things forward. So take for
How?
example, so
How did
take for
that? How
example,
did the giveaway of $10 million help to move things forward?
and again, I think if we go back to the occasion that was spoken about, it was where we were talking about supporting our farmers, supporting our fishers through COVID, through the volcanic eruption, where at the end of the day,
When was that money giveaway, Dominique? Do you recall?
well, that's what I'm saying. I
Not last
if
year.
I if my memory
It wasn't
is
last year.
last year it was spoken about or last year it was given. That's what you say?
Yeah, last year was given
I, I,
10
I
million. There's no other country in the world. What a government.
no. I don't think it was given last year. I think
All
it was
right.
referred to
I know
last
you
year.
don't think. You don't want to believe,
No,
but
and
it
this is
was.
where
It was
I
last
mean
year.
I realize my friend and compadre Augustine is there, and I'm certain he can obviously speak to it a little more than I can
And yeah.
because if
I was
I
expecting.
remember if I remember correctly, that
Mhm.
conversation had to do with support to the farmers, fishers,
Dominic,
based on
my
what
brother,
had taken place.
we just borrowed $35 million and said we're gonna spend it in housing because 2,000 houses were destroyed, were damaged, and we have spent millions since 2021. So the conversation is a continuous conversation about borrowing money and doing whatever we want with it. Let me ask you this question. Are you satisfied with accountability in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Are you
Uh,
satisfied with transparency?
I would say yes, it is improving.
Yes, what?
It's improving.
When is now better than? Give me a period when now is better than that time.
I can say basically going back into the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, the reporting mechanism that is being used today is much sharper, it's much quicker, it's more thorough than
Okay,
what it used
so
to be.
great. So you're contrasting the current administration with the previous administration.
No, I'm speaking about
You said in
a
the
time
80s and
period.
90s as
I,
compared to
I, I,
now.
I'm speaking about a time period and how the reporting systems
But
have been evolved.
the time period 80s and 90s belong to the opposition, and this period now. So the question I want to ask you is this:
Yeah.
what's the evidence of transparency and accountability under this administration?
The fact that almost everything that is basically spoken about is in the public. Whether we agree or we disagree, whether we figure the information is fully accurate or not, it's in the public.
But that's not accountability. I mean, you as an accountant would
No,
know.
no, I'm
This is why.
understand. No, no,
Hold on.
no,
I'm not gonna
you can't go
hold on a
yet.
second.
Hold on.
Hold
The
on.
fact
You
that
hold on a
it's
second.
in the
You
public.
right. You as an accountant would do my
What do we
my
do with that
returns.
information?
You would do my returns, right?
Yes,
Or you would do the accounting for my business,
yes,
and you may put certain asterisks I say, boy, I ain't sure what happening here. So you do certain asterisks around the work, pointing to questionable things.
Yes.
Are you isn't that the same thing that we could point to in St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
And I'm going to say this.
So it can't just be
No, no. And because you use my profession, I would say before I sign off on your returns, all those asterisks have to be addressed.
right.
So what happens is, okay, take for example, there is a question as to your income. I believe that the income is not fully reported.
Right.
I'm going to take all available information that I can, especially the ones that, let's say, has been spoken about. So all of a sudden you went bragging about the $1 million that you invested somewhere that I didn't find on your books. And I'm going to use that as a way to obviously unravel truth. And this is
Right.
what I'm saying. The fact that the information is made public,
Is that evidence of transparency?
yes,
Here's an example, right? Since 2021, the government has stopped publishing live births and deaths. I went to the statistical office about 3 weeks ago, and there's no disclosure since 2021. How does that comport with transparency?
and again, this is where I would say the fact that you are able to actually walk in and say that, hey, listen, something is wrong, is
And that's
where
transparency?
is where now we are forcing people to basically, hey, go do your job, get this information out because it's useful.
No,
We need to
but
know.
how? Okay, okay.
And
But
this is
how do they do the job if they were directed not to release the information?
now, Jomo.
That's I guess you would
I,
tell me
I,
that's above
I
your
would
pay grade, right?
no, I wouldn't want to think, and I want to be upfront and honest with this. Where there is something like life births, etc., where I think between our health administration and so we have basically been talking about all the good work that we have been doing with respect to infant mortality, etc. That
Right,
information should be available.
right, but it's not. And part of the reason why it's not is because of the excess deaths around the world since 2021. They don't want to disclose it. But
Um,
here's a helping hand from your brother Augustine Ferdinand.
yes,
He says the government has an audit office that audits government's accounts. Helping hand. I want you to take it up so I could show you how he's not really a helping hand.
I don't
Because
know why.
the truth of the matter is that the audit office is woefully understaffed. And the last audit report, I got it. I went there and I got it. No, I went to the audit office and got it. It's years behind schedule.
And
So how is that transparency or accountability?
well, actually, I may actually say to you that while I don't have the inside knowledge, so I'm putting that disclaimer
Yes.
up front, I would say to you that I would find it interesting that the time taken now is to ensure that the information being presented is actually accurate and
Right.
reliable.
Right.
Because, okay, take for example, I tell persons, yes, the world of doing business is now more complex than ever.
Yes.
And obviously, a lot of these systems that we have put in place don't really make things as simpler uh, as they used to be. I mean, I could tell you, identifying a debit and credit back when we were using what was called 14 columns was easier to use in accounting system today,
Yes.
right? Now, the fact that persons are actually taking the time and going through and investigating and ensure that Jomo, they're not leaving the asterisks, but they are actually going and investigate to ensure
No,
that
but who investigates it? Do you know, for example, Dominic, that in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there is a law which was read, debated, and passed in the House of Assembly called the Freedom of Information Act. Do you know when it was passed?
No.
I'll tell you, it was passed 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
but it has not been assented to. So in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I cannot make an application to the Freedom of Information Act office which says I want to compel the government to disclose deaths and live births or the accounts for
But
whatever
Jomo,
whatever other
I'm
institution I
going,
want that into.
no,
Are you
and I'm
aware?
going to say,
Are you aware of that?
and I'm going to say to you that actually, I think you are actually doing it even right now, which is a past part of transparency where you are highlighting, hey, listen, there is an issue and we need the issue resolved.
I agree, but
So,
the fact that I can highlight it, I mean, goodness, we haven't gotten to the point yet where I can't highlight it, but
democracy
you
has its
have
steps.
you have serious pushback. You
No,
know,
but it's still,
you
it's
have
still,
you have a you you have a you have a prime minister who described people as what? How did he describe them? Um, jackasses, dogs, and cats. In other words, the analogy is made that some dogs can run away, cats can run away, but me stay up. So if you want to run away, you run away.
Jomo,
The
we asked you've
analogy,
been trying to get in for the longest while.
the analogy is toxic. Somebody's trying to call in.
yes,
Caller, good
yes.
evening. It's time for your voice.
I almost thought you guys wasn't taking no calls tonight. I've been trying for a long time.
Well. Here you are. You have your chance now.
Yeah, I know 40 is looking for some song bites to play on this program. Sandals was mentioned briefly. I thought you guys would talk about Sandals more. Mr.
Talk about. We should talk about sandals more to make which point?
No, I thought it would have come up more because you were talking about unemployment and stuff in this. So I thought it would have come up more into the
You want to talk about sandals and unemployment or employment?
Let me ask my question, Jomo. Let me ask my question. Mr. Dominic, what would you say to people like Jomo and others who saying that companies like Sandals come in the Caribbean and take out 90% or more of the profit out of the country?
I didn't say that. That's the statistic from the University of the West Indies at Mono campus in Jamaica.
And based on what
No.
you say,
Hold on, Dominic. Hold on. Sir, I did not say that. That is the statistic that came from the university. The University of the West Indies says in the tourism dollar, 90% of the tourism is either does not come into the country or it leaves.
You said it and they said it. Okay, so let's hear what Dominic responds to it.
But I'm saying it is based on some kind of study. It's not just something that pulled out of the.
Let's not waste on time. Let's not waste our time on that. Let me hear what Dominic has to say about that. About tourism.
Well, you don't want real stats. All right, brother Dominic. Here's your chance.
let me get it correct before I answer. 90% of profit.
90% of the tourist dollar. That's what the study said. 90% of the tourist dollar. You can check it out. Ask your colleagues at
no.
at Mona.
I will accept.
Not Mona at Mona in Jamaica.
Well, I first thought that the reference was going to be made to profit, and I would say if it's profit, I have no issues there. If it's on the dollar spent, I would basically question it because again, you actually look at it and you realize that hey, listen, there's significant costs that are incurred that basically remains in the country. So to say that
you don't agree with this. You don't agree with this study.
I I would challenge it.
Okay, so let's not be detained by that. How much of the tourism dollar you think stays in any of the Caribbean islands?
I think at least, honestly, at least 60 to 70%.
What is the basis for thinking that?
Okay. When you look at, take for example, a person basically, when you look at the cost construct of a hotel, you realize a lot of its direct cost is basically at least.
The plant. The
No, no,
structure.
I'm talking operational. Here, I'm
Oh,
talking
okay.
operational, right? You look at it and you would realize it's actually about 40, 50%. And then when you look at it, administrative costs, its administrative cost accounts for another 20, 25%. And that's why I made the comment.
So, so you believe, so if let us say that the total cost, the total turnover is $10, you think that Sandals or any other big company is satisfied with leaving with $2?
20% return?
Uh,
20% return.
uh,
Yeah.
okay.
If you look at, again, if you
No,
look at
I take if you say that if you say that you're satisfied 20%, all right, I'm not
no,
going to argue that.
this is where
Let's go back to the audit report, because you're getting another help from your brother Augustine. He says there is not a lack of audit reports. Leacock applauded the audit office for bringing them up more up to date. But are they up to date? They are not. They are way behind by years. So what is our friend Augustine 49 saying to us? If you put more manpower in there, we probably would get them even more up to date.
Joe,
Should that be a priority? Should we spend a few more dollars there than spend $50 million for uh
revenue generation.
no revenue generation? I like that.
I don't want to catch you.
For Cricket World Cup, for example.
Revenue generation.
Yeah.
That's why I coined it that way. The
Yeah.
whole thing is, and as we progress, it will get better. Are we behind? Yes, we're behind. Are significant efforts being made to move us forward? Yes, there's significant effort.
Where are those? Where are those manifested? The significant efforts to move us forward.
It's manifested in the fact that, hey, listen, a lot of what is being audited today, it is, I would say, about maybe 100 times more than what was. And when I say that is, there are no dollars today that is being spent in the public that is not being reviewed by some professional, whether it's in the audit department itself or they have contracted it out for somebody else to look at.
What do you think? What do you think is the per capita? Well, let me not ask you that question that way, because per capita is not. What do you think is the average salary in St. Vincent? I mean, you are a accountant, you ought to know, or come close to knowing.
Since what you want, what it is now or what it was prior to the change with the minimum wage?
No, I want what it is now. Average salary in St. Vincent.
I would say somewhere between maybe 1,700 and 2,000.
1,700 and 2,000. And up until a few months ago, it was about what?
I would say.
Although that question is questionable, yeah? That's questionable number,
No,
because the vast majority of people are work at a lower level, and they make like about $1,200. Even now, they make $1,200.
And I would say again, where a person starts out with $1,200, and once that person performs and able to show their worth and their value, a lot of times their salary moves beyond that $1,200.
Not in mass. You may have, that's few and far between. That's few and far between. They have people who have been working, Dominic, for over a decade. I have a friend who worked in an office for more than 10 years and was making less than $1,000 in an office.
And no, and I'm not going to doubt you. And this is where I would say that I could also tell you of persons. Take, for example, I normally say in my office, within 5 years, once the person is productive and showing what they're worth, they find that their salary is doubled within the 5 years
Ah,
period.
I want to come work with you.
I know you would, Jomo. But again, this is where we look at performance-based
Yes,
incentives. When
yes,
persons are basically showing that, hey, listen, they're going to bring value, you realize that, hey, listen, you want to retain this person. You have to retain this person. And this
yes.
is where I talk about, hey, listen, in most institutions, by the time you finish probation, most people know who's a go-getter and who's not, who's just occupying space and who's not.
Right. One of our listeners says, Ming Ming Johnny says, if you believe that 70% of the money dollar stays in St. Vincent, she has a bridge she wants to sell you. I
Um,
would give it
she,
Ming
she,
Ming. I would
she,
give him the bridge
she
for
might
free.
she might realize I own the bridge, and she gotta be careful how she says. No, no, and the reality is, and this is where we could take all the financials that would be produced, and we could see it for ourselves. So we don't have to guess. And I'm speaking from experience.
Right.
We're not. I am not talking about a listen. We don't spend money overseas because so many things we have to import, etc. But again, when you're talking about what an investor is able to take from investing, right now, the marketplace is so competitive that if you're taking 20%, you're taking a lot.
There's a comment that says there's Reject saying, Mr. Sutherland, I commend you for valuing your employees. However, again, the general statement does not apply to everyone. She's absolutely right.
What this is where Jomo, and this is where we want to be. Earlier, I was talking about encouraging the people in the house. And this is where I will actually turn and say, hey, listen, we as employers have to be able to value the assets
Yeah.
that we have, which most of the time is the human capacity or the human capital. We have to be able to value them. If, especially if we're talking about growth and development, if we're talking about ensuring that, hey, listen, we're not going to lose a good employee to a competitor,
Right.
we have to actually start to look at our employees. And I would say to you, I see from what I'm doing, I'm not alone. I'm not unique. I'm not special. There
Right.
are a lot of businessmen who are successful because they're able to employ and retain through compensation
Right.
quality workers.
Oh, well, yes, some people can do that. I never understood, for example, in my line of work, why uh, a clerk, a legal clerk, could be paid $600 a month. I never understood it.
And Jomo, I
It was
mean, I
just
don't want
it
to
was
ask
just
you,
mind blowing to me that,
I don't
an
want to ask
attorney,
you
an
your
accomplished
business,
attorney, would
but
pay a clerk $700 a month.
if
That
you
just didn't make any sense to me.
and because you are moving forward, you appreciated the persons who in your office was adding the value, and this is why you'll have a problem with that.
But we have a limited time left. I want to
Yes.
take you now into the area of politics. I know in the last election you ran against Major Daniel. I mean
No.
Major Leacock, Major Sinclair Leacock.
Yes.
Maybe I said Daniel. Maybe you would have preferred to run against Daniel, but
Um.
you ran against Leacock. You lost by a significant margin. Do you intend to run again?
Once it's God's will, yes.
Once it's
God's will, yes.
once it's God's will.
Yes.
I see. Do you fancy your chances this time around?
Yes.
What is the basis for you to think that you're going to do better than you did last time?
Again, one of the things is that obviously, person saw me as a newcomer. Persons basically looked at it as, hey, listen, the cycle of keep changing candidates in the constituency, looking at you really look like you come to stay. So the person, I figure at the end of the day, just like an employer would put you through a probation period, I think my constituency have put me through my probation period.
You think you passed the probation?
Well, I'm here having a conversation with you on
That's
politics.
commendable.
I
That's
don't think
commendable,
so.
my brother. A number of people in your unit has just refused to come on, which makes the conversation very lopsided. But I commend you for that. And you think that the constituents of Central Kingstown at this time? Well, let me ask different. What has the current parliamentary representative of Central Kingston done or have not done that gives you the feeling that your chances are better now?
Put the interest of the constituency first.
Huh?
Put the interest of the constituency first.
You think he did that or he did not?
Hasn't.
Why don't you think he did that?
At the end of the day, there, while I'm not going to say everything that is done obviously is perfect, I think a lot that the um, ruling party, the ULP, the party I hope that I can carry their flag in the next election, has done, I think is good. And what you have is a situation where we can't have opposition just for be opposing just for opposing sake.
But the opposition supports the government 60, 70, 80, 90% of the times.
When today over
extended period of time. Extended period of time. I mean, I was in parliament as a speaker. 90% of the bills, 95% of the bills, they supported the government on them.
And at the end of the day,
is that true or is it not true?
I think it's true.
Okay.
And what this
so what is the basis for your charge then?
No, and then this is in parliament when you are left with no choice but to, because
you're left with no choice. You always have a choice.
And you're left with no choice, and that's what I'm saying. So
but that's what I'm saying. I'm articulating the contrary view. You always have a choice.
I appreciate that, and I'm saying to you my opinion, which I would like to think I can give, is that at the end of the day, you have started with a position that, hey, listen, I can't help my constituency because I'm not in power. And at the end of the day, what you should do, like what is done in North American politics, is find a way to basically bridge the gap so that at the end of the day, your constituency is not left out.
You don't think that Major does that? I think Major does that more than any other opposition politician.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay. Somebody's asking, Winston is asking, what are your views on the constituency fund, which has been really championed over the years by Sinclair Leacock?
Again, Jomo, you and myself have been, well, earlier you basically pointed out about accountability. And for me, is that I don't think we need a constituency fund. I think obviously
you think they need one in Barbados? They do. You think they need one in Jamaica? They do.
Again, I don't think so. And
but I'm saying to you that there are constituency funds in Jamaica and in Barbados.
Yes, and I appreciate what you're saying. And I'm saying at the end of the day, in St. Vincent, because
you don't need one.
We can basically ensure, and this is where I have entered the political arena to say, hey, listen, we have to be able to look out for every single constituency. And
You think
to
that's
look out
being
for
done
every
now?
single
You think that's
constituency,
being done now?
Hello?
You think that's being done now?
Again, I would say I think the efforts need to be improved.
Need to be improved.
Yeah.
If you want to grade the ULP administration as an insider, but as someone with the accounting skill, on a scale of 1 to 10, you would grade them how?
I in terms of our movement,
Governance, performance.
I would basically be saying, hey, listen, I think we have been good. We have been 75 to 80%.
75 to 80%.
Yes.
And you say that with a straight face.
Yes.
My
No.
brother.
No, and
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
it's
Go ahead.
okay for us to differ in opinion, you know.
No. It's okay. Go ahead. You were going to say something else.
Right. I'm saying that when I look at the fact that, hey, listen, over the years, yes, there have been challenges that basically have confronted us. We had to put strategies in place to deal with them that would have derailed, obviously, let's say the outcomes. I am saying that the efforts that has been put in has ensured that we have gotten back on track in spite of the challenges that we have faced.
Okay.
If we look at
Would you agree with me? Would you agree with me that after 23 years, a quarter century in governance, on the major indices of progress, unemployment, poverty alleviation, underemployment, crime, with the possible exception of education, and even there are serious problems, we have hardly moved the needle.
I would
if
say,
not have gone backwards.
No, and I would say again, I always refer back to the Japanese economy in development, and you understand that, hey, listen, it took 40 years, a lot of other economies, it has taken 50, 60. We are looking at, and last week I heard your program where you were looking at the movement with respect to China. And you realize that, hey, listen, development and progress is not an overnight challenge. But
I guess that's why you're looking for six. I guess that's why you're looking for 6 in a row. My friend, look, we are at the top of the hour. In fact, it's now 10:01. I want to thank you so much for going. It has really been a smooth flowing program. You're a scholar. You're a gentleman. You are able to come on and talk your party's views and positions. Thank you so much for coming on. I truly enjoyed interviewing you. I hope you would come again. Those of you who joined us, and I want to apologize first for what happened earlier. I don't know what, the program just dropped out. We had to start it all over. Those of you who joined us, thank you for joining. There are so many other things you could have done. You decided to stay with Dominique, Suddle, and myself. Those gentlemen who called in, thank you. I hope you can sing a song on Sandals. That may become Road March. All of you, remember, read, pay close attention, because what you don't know can kill you. Until next week, this is Jomo Thomas saying good night from Voices. And next week, we have the new Cuban ambassador to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'll see you then. Good night.
WeFM 99.9 presents Voices, a talk show that's not just new, it's phenomenal. Voices.